Before the American Civil War began, fear was already living in the South. White slaveholders were afraid, not of foreign armies, not of economic collapse. They were afraid of the people they had enslaved. More than anything else, they feared one thing: a large organized uprising. That fear shaped everything: strict slave codes, armed patrols, night surveillance, brutal punishments meant to send a message. But what many of them did not know was that their worst fear was already being quietly organized. Hidden in plain sight was a secret all-black militant organization preparing what could have become the largest enslaved rebellion in American history. They called themselves the Knights of Liberty. And this was not a rushed rebellion. It was disciplined. It was patient. It was planned to last 10 years before action. But before they could strike, secret orders stopped the uprising before it began. The story starts in August 1846 in St. Louis, Missouri. A traveling barber named Moses Dickson called a quiet meeting with 11 trusted men. He later said their purpose was simple: to prepare for business. That business was the destruction of slavery. Those 12 men became known as the Order of 12. Their plan was long-term. They would spread into slave-holding states across the South. They would recruit carefully only men who were brave, disciplined, patient, and capable of keeping secrets. Every member swore an oath that lasted until death. This was not anger reacting in the moment. It was strategy. For 10 full years, they would prepare. And then they would launch a coordinated war against slavery. As members spread across the South, the Knights began building their network quietly. Even before any rebellion, they were already active in the Underground Railway. In a 1901 interview, Moses Dickson claimed the Knights operated a network that could move freedom seekers across the entire country. Disguises were key. In one rescue, Dickson worked with tailors and barbers to disguise a mother and daughter from Louisiana as sailors. A fellow member smuggled them onto a steamboat as crew. Eventually, they reached freedom in Canada. Dickson later claimed they used a secret telegraph code that was never broken. Other black resistance groups used similar tactics. In Detroit, members of a group called the African Mysteries identified one another through silent knuckle signals, a precise touch, and mirrored response that confirmed trust. These methods allowed people to organize under constant danger. But the Knights of Liberty wanted more than just an escape. They wanted territory. Dickson planned a direct attack on Atlanta. The goal was to establish a black-controlled stronghold in the South, a place where formerly enslaved people would defend themselves and live freely. This vision came from experience. Dickson's parents had been enslaved. As a child in Cincinnati, he survived race riots where white mobs attacked black residents and tried to drive them out. He learned early that freedom was not something you waited for. It was something you defended. That lesson became even clearer after Nat Turner's rebellion in 1831. Turner and others launched an armed uprising in Virginia, killing dozens before being stopped. The response was brutal. Hundreds of black people, many innocent, were beaten or killed. Southern states passed even stricter slave laws. Gatherings were restricted. Surveillance increased. The rebellion changed the South forever. The Knights of Liberty studied those failures. Dickson believed that earlier revolts moved too quickly, too openly, without long-term structure. His plan would be different. 10 years of preparation, careful recruitment, secret communication. But preparation required money. Dickson sought funding from abolitionists in both the North and South. Many believed they were donating to support escape networks through the Underground Railroad. Few realized they were helping fund a possible insurrection. By 1856, the Knights had grown strong. They had manpower, structure, funding. They were ready, and then they stopped. Dickson saw what was happening around him. Violence between pro-slavery and anti-slavery groups was already breaking out along the Missouri-Kansas border. The country was sliding towards civil war. If the Knights launched their rebellion now, it could be crushed. Worse, it might trigger even harsher retaliation against black communities. So Dickson made a painful decision. He called off the uprising. Not everyone was happy. Rumors of rebellion spread across Texas, Louisiana, and even Maryland. Slaveholders panicked, patrols increased, weapons were prepared. But the coordinated attack never came. 5 years later, in 1861, the Civil War began. Almost immediately, black Americans began providing intelligence to the Union Army. Escaped enslaved people shared information. Covert networks helped move messages. At that time, black Americans were not officially allowed to enlist. So, who built those intelligence networks so quickly? There is no direct document proving the Knights' Liberty led earlier wartime intelligence, but the similarities are striking. In 1851, an all-black intelligence group called the Loyal League formed in Ohio, not far from Dickson's base. By the time war began, it already had communication lines running through the South. That level of organization takes years. Even though the rebellion never happened, the Knights' work did not disappear. After the war, their network evolved into a mutual aid society known as the International Order of 12 of Knights and Daughters of Tabor. Dickson helped organize schools in St. Louis and became a founding member of what is now known as Lincoln University of Missouri, one of the oldest historically black universities in the United States. After his death in 1901, the legacy continued. Institutions like Taborian hospitals in Mississippi became one of the first medical centers staffed entirely by black professionals. The Knights of Liberty reminds us of something important. Black Americans were never passive. They were planning, organizing, resisting, long before emancipation was declared. We will never know what would have happened if the Knights had launched their war in 1856. But their existence alone challenges a simple story: the idea that freedom was simply handed down by Abraham Lincoln or won only by the Union Army. Freedom was demanded, it was prepared for, it was organized for, long before it was officially recognized. So what part of this story surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments, because history is rarely as simple as we were taught.